this municipal year. So I will read the guidance notes in full, and that is for those of you members of the public that are new to a planning committee, but particularly because we have new members on the panel on committee this evening. So before we start, we need to make a few housekeeping announcements. This meeting is held in person following all COVID regulations which have been lifted, and is live streamed on the Southwark Council's YouTube channel. Firstly, there are no planned alarm tests today. If you do hear the alarm, leave by the nearest exit and make your way to the agreed assembly point, which is at St John's Churchyard off Druid Street, and council security staff will be available to direct you. The public toilets are located by the main reception area from whence you came. There is no smoking allowed in this building, so please ensure that you do not smoke on the premises. Please can you switch off your mobile phones or put the phone to silent whilst the meeting is in progress during the committee meeting. Members of this committee will not access the internet, send or receive emails, text messages or tweets concerning the business of this subcommittee. The code for accessing the Southwark Council's free Wi-Fi is uppercase F, lowercase r, 33, uppercase W, lowercase I, exclamation mark. I'd ask you to please to be considerate towards other people in the room and take care not to disturb the proceedings. If there are anyone that feels minded to do so, you will be warned, and on a second occasion you will be escorted out of the room. We do not have any apologies for absence on tonight's meeting, and thank you, all members are present. So therefore, can I have confirmation of voting members this evening, please? Please raise your hand. Thank you very much. Does any member wish to declare any interest or dispensation in respect of any item or issue to be considered at this meeting this evening?
I think that's on. Just to say on item 7.1, I am one of the ward councillors for where this application is being considered. By plan, I haven't been involved in this application at all, and I'm planning to listen to everything that I'm hearing today from officers and from any members of the public, and making my decision based on what I hear in the meeting.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tester. The following additional documents were circulated prior to the meeting: the members' pack and the addendum report, and I hope that members have had an opportunity to read that. Just for members of the public, Councillor Richard Livingston has been cited as the Vice Chair. In fact, that's an error. It's Councillor Emily Tester who is Vice Chair for this particular committee. So thank you, Emily, for your patience on this, and I know that it will be amended for the next meeting. Thank you. For those members who were present, and I don't think there was, but can we approve the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 2nd of March 2022? Thank you very much. Thank you. So in terms of the procedure for this evening, the items on the agenda, before, let me just try and see if I can just summarise this as well. So any representatives that wish to speak can address the subcommittee for 3 minutes, which will be taken in the order of objectors, the applicant's agent, and a ward councillor, and on each occasion members of the committee have an opportunity to ask questions. The subcommittee is open to the public. There should be no interruptions from the audience, as I've already stated. Finally, the planning subcommittee comprises of members from different political parties. Therefore, we are not politically whipped. The decisions we make today are in accordance with the council's planning policy and based on information contained in the relevant reports and addendum reports. And so I will then proceed to item 7.1, application 218/AP /3577, 153 to 159 Abbeyfield Road, Southwark, London, SE 162BS. And I invite Abbey to present. Thank you, Abbey.
Thank you, Chair. So item 7.1 is 153 to 159 Abbeyfield Road. The application is for the demolition of a two-storey former council office building and a temporary structure, and the erection of a Part 3 and Part 6 residential building containing 13 social rented affordable homes. I'd just like to draw your attention to the addendum where we have provided some additional information on energy and the reasons that the development cannot connect to the district heating network, some information on housing need in the borough, and then a table outlining the consultation that has taken place as part of this application. So the plan on the screen shows the application site, which is outlined in red. And here is an aerial view of the site. So it's the building there in the middle. Here we've got a proposed site plan. So you can see that the proposed building is of a similar footprint to the existing building on site, which is the vacant two-storey council housing office, and the proposal is for 13 new social rented council homes in a Part 3 and Part 6 storey building. So it would provide 3 one-bedroom homes, 3 two-bedroom homes, and 7 three-bedroom homes. These are some photographs of the site. So on the left there you can see the side of the existing office on the site, and then the photo on the right just shows the area between some existing housing and the building. So we've received 5 objections to the application. These relate to the height, the character of the development, density, the size of the flats, a lack of family housing, lack of outdoor amenity space, affordability, wheelchair accessible homes, loss of privacy, impact on overshadowing, loss of daylight and sunlight, noise and vibration, construction impacts, and impacts on parking. So in terms of the quality of accommodation, the proposal would provide 13 new social rented council homes as part of the council housing delivery programme. This would include 77% two-bedroom or more homes and 54% three-bedroom homes, so this meets policy requirements. In terms of the flats, they would all meet or exceed minimum space standards, with all of them being at least dual aspect. So across ground and first floor, there are some duplex units, and then the upper floors are all 3-bedroom homes, which are triple aspect. There are no wheelchair accessible homes on the site due to flood risk preventing sleeping accommodation being able to be provided at ground floor. However, we have agreed a offset financial contribution of £40,000, which is the equivalent of 10% per habitable room. All of the homes have private balconies, with all the 3 beds having at least 10 square metres, and there is 66.5 square metres of communal amenity space provided to the rear. Again, this meets policy requirements, which requires 50 square metres for new flatted developments, and then a slight additional space to offset some of the smaller balconies on the smaller flats, which again is in line with policy requirements. And there is 116.5 square metres of play space on the site as well. So this is a ground floor plan which shows 3 of the duplex units, which then have additional accommodation at first floor. You can see cycle storage, refuse storage, and just the communal entrance lobby, and the ground floor terraces to the properties. Second floor, these are the upstairs of the duplex units, and an additional 1-bedroom flat to the front here. Again, you can see you've got balconies, so the duplex units benefit from balconies at ground floor and first floor. And then above this, you've got the 3rd, 4th, and 5th floor plans, which are all 3-bed units. Again, they benefit from 2 balconies, and as mentioned, they're all triple aspect. So in terms of the design, the building has been designed to follow the existing building lines along the street. The Shumford plan form would ease the transition between the buildings. So you've got some terraces to the west and some Victorian buildings to the east. And the overall height of 6 stories would sit well within the very townscape. So you've got a mix of properties all around the site. There's a 5-storey building directly opposite, some lower terraced properties on an estate which are 2 stories, and then right next to the building you've got some Victorian 3-storey properties. So yeah, the height would sit well, and then it steps down here to reduce the impacts on the 2-storey buildings next to it. So in terms of the impact on the amenity of neighbours, as mentioned, it's been designed to follow the building lines with some chamfered corners, again further reducing the impact. There are no windows proposed on the eastern elevation, so there would be no overlooking to the adjacent Victorian villas. And then on the west side, where the 2-storey buildings on the existing estate are, there are high-level windows at ground to 2nd floor, so there would be no direct overlooking. And then on the upper floors, there are windows proposed on this elevation, but as the neighbouring properties are only 2 stories, there would be no direct overlooking. And they're set back by 8.5 metres from the neighbouring properties. In terms of daylight and sunlight, all of the neighbouring properties have been assessed, and there are some impacts to properties along Abbeyfield Road. So this diagram here just shows in red the properties that would experience some impacts in terms of daylight and sunlight. So the first property is 105 Abbeyfield Road. So if I just go back to this one, it's the bottom property, so closest to the road. In terms of vertical sky component, which is the impact on an individual window, 3 windows would pass BRE guidance, whereas 1 would fail, so there's a 75% BRE compliance here. BRE guidance recommends that impacts would be seen if the reduction is below 0.8, and here it would be 0.78, so it's only very slightly below. And then the no skyline, so the daylight across the whole room, would actually improve as a result of the proposed development. So you can see here the window affected is W5, which is a living kitchen diner, and the room has windows on both sides of the property, so as mentioned, the overall room would not experience any noticeable impacts. 107 Abbeyfield Road is the next property along, and here there would be 2 windows which would fail to meet BRE guidance in terms of the vertical sky component. Again, it's only marginally below BRE guidance at 0.77 and 0.79. The windows are highlighted in the image on the screen, W2 and W3. And again, the no skyline of the whole room would meet BRE guidance. 109 Abbeyfield Road, there are 2 windows that would experience an impact in terms of vertical sky component. Again, these are quite marginal at 0.78 and 0.75. This has been assessed again with the effect of overhangs removed, and this was slightly increased to 0.77 and 0.79. Again, the no skyline of the room would comply with BRE guidance, so it's those 2 first floor windows shown on the screen. Number 111, again 2 windows would fail to meet. These are slightly larger impacts at 0.43 and 0.57. Again, it's been assessed with the effect of balconies removed, and this would then come to 0.45 and 0.57. These are 2 first floor windows again, and I've included a floor plan here which shows the layout of the flat. So it's this room to the front, so it's an open plan reception room and kitchen, which has 2 windows to the rear, which again means that the overall daylight in the room would not be noticeable. So these 2 windows here would not be affected because they're on the other side of the property. And then again, 113, there are 2 windows that would be affected in terms of vertical sky component at 0.53 and 0.64, but the overall rooms would both meet BRE guidance. So these are 2 separate rooms. W5 on the left there is a kitchen, and W6 is a living room, but again, they've got windows to the rear, so the overall daylight would not experience a noticeable impact. I've shown an image here looking at the rear of these properties, so you can see where they've got the windows on the other side from the development for the dual aspect rooms. In terms of landscaping, 1 small category C tree would be removed, but this would be mitigated by on-site planting. A condition has been recommended for details of landscaping. A green roof would also be provided, and the urban greening factor of the development would be 0.4, which meets policy requirements. And as mentioned earlier, there would be 66.5 square metres of communal amenity space, which meets policy requirements and offsets the smaller balconies, 1 and 2 bedroom homes, which don't quite meet 10 square metres. There's 116.5 square metres of children's play space on site. This is a slight shortfall to policy requirements of 65.8 square metres. There were different options explored to provide all of the play space on site, but this balances providing the necessary communal amenity space and as much play space as possible. We looked at providing it on the roof, and that wasn't feasible due to the need for air source heat pumps and PVs on the roof. So the shortfall will be offset by a financial contribution of £9,935.80. This is just a landscaping plan showing the 2 separate areas. So directly to the rear would be the children's play space, and then the 66.5 square metres of communal amenity space in the corner. And again, the landscaping would be subject to condition. The development would be car free. There would be no parking lost, as there isn't any on the site at the moment, and future occupiers would be restricted from obtaining parking permits in the CPZ. A transport assessment was carried out looking at parking, and there would be a net reduction of vehicle movement during AM and PM peak hours in comparison to the previous use on the site. The daily trip rates were reduced from 22 to 10. 25 long stay cycle parking spaces are to be provided on site at ground floor, and 4 Sheffield stands for short stay parking. There's also refuse storage provided at ground floor, which would be accessible from Abbeyfield Road for collection, and a condition has been recommended for a construction environmental management plan to be submitted. In terms of energy, the building has been designed to reduce energy demand. So this relies on the building fabric and the use of air source heat pumps and PVs on the roof. This would reduce CO2 emissions to 59.8% over Part L 2013 regulations. The options for providing energy to the site have been explored. It wasn't feasible for the development to connect to the district heat network due to the need to provide a substation at ground floor, which would result in the loss of one of the units. So the most appropriate strategy for energy has been implemented here, and this would then require a financial contribution of 21,470 to offset to zero carbon. Just to cover the planning obligations that I've mentioned, 100% social rented homes would be secured. There would be a £40,000 financial contribution for wheelchair accessible housing, a £9,935 financial contribution for children's play space, removal of parking permit rights in the CPZ, an offset contribution for carbon of £21,470, and the monitoring, reporting and verifying of energy performance in line with the BC requirement of planning policy. And here is a visual of the site from Abbeyfield Road. A visual from the southeast on the roundabout. From the southwest, so the other side of the roundabout, looking towards Hawkstone Road, and then a visual from Southwark Park. So to summarise, the proposal would provide 13 new social rented council homes, including 7 3-bedroom family homes. It would make use of a vacant site at an appropriate height, scale, massing and design that would not adversely impact on the amenity of neighbours. It is recommended that the application is approved subject to conditions and the completion of a legal agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Can I just say that those additional visuals regarding the windows have been really helpful. So thank you for incorporating them into the pack, and I hope members concur. Do members have any questions for further clarification to Abby, to the officer? Councillor Livingston.
Thank you, and thank you for the report, and thank you particularly for the information on energy. Very thorough piece of work there, so thank you for that. So I'm not going to ask about the energy. What I am going to ask about instead was the £10,000 that have been identified for as the offset for the play space that couldn't be provided, and just really to understand where that might be spent. I mean, obviously Southwark Park is just at the back of there, but £10,000 doesn't go very far, so just really to understand how that was going to be used.
I have spoken to colleagues in our Parks Department, and they're currently carrying out a project to improve this, to provide, I believe it's a splash park in Southwark Park, and the money would be used to contribute towards that.
Thank you, Councillor Livingston and Abby. Any further questions from committee members? Councillor Hickson.
Hi, thank you so much, Abby. I actually have 2 short questions, if that's permissible, the quick ones. And just thank you for the amendment answering my question around the provision where the housing goes. And you write here the development would offer a local lettings policy of 50% or 100%. I'm just wondering how you are defining local here, and if you could just give some comments on that. And then the second question is just how many cycle places are there in the storage, in the cycle storage?
Just to say, additionally, I mean, obviously, if you're able to comment, but you can pose the same question to the applicant when that time comes as well, Councillor Hickson.
Yeah, so thank you for your questions. The first question, I think housing will be better positioned to answer that, but it's a local lettings policy, so the local area. And then the cycle parking, off the top of my head, there are, I believe, 25 long stay cycle parking spaces, which are, if I just go back to the ground floor plan, yeah, so this area in the middle at the front of the building, there'd be 25 spaces, so that meets policy requirements. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Councillor Hickson. But certainly repeat that question to the applicant. Any additional questions? No? Okay, thank you. Moving on. We don't.
I'm Patrick Cooper. I actually work for the council, because obviously it's a council project, so I'm a project manager overseeing the project. This is the architect.
I'm John Lenine from Bell Phillips Architects. We're the agent for the applicant. And I think I'm going to do the 3 minutes, yeah.
Who's going to speak?
Yeah,
Right.
myself, yeah.
Okay, we'll start timing now, and we'll give you a 36-second warning. Is that okay? All righty. Okay, go
Thanks.
ahead.
Okay, good evening all. Thanks for the opportunity to say a few words about the design of the building. So we've basically been tasked with optimising the site here for the council, and that has turned out into a relatively small but significant number of high-quality homes for social rent, all for social rent. The homes are all spacious, airy, well-lit, well-insulated, and all dual aspect at least, some are triple aspect. The flats exceed space standards on all, and all except the smaller one-bed homes have separate naturally lit kitchens. The 6 larger flats on the top 3 stories are triple aspect and have 2 balconies each. The shared areas in the building are also generous, with a bright and welcoming white tile-lined entrance porch and a link directly through to the rear garden, looking through to the park, Southwark Park to the north. And the floors have a maximum of 3 flats per core. In terms of landscaping, the site as it stands is mostly made up of hard surfaces, so biodiversity will be much improved. There'll be much more planting than currently, including on the building's roof. Beyond the quality of the homes themselves, we have worked hard to fit the building in with its surroundings and to minimise its impact on its neighbours. So form-wise, the mass of the building has been carefully modelled to reduce impact on adjoining homes. The proposal, as Abbey mentioned, sits among buildings of varying heights and sizes, from the 2-storey terrace to the west and up to Abbey House across the roundabout at 16 stories. So initially we proposed 7 stories as a reasonable height, and in discussion with the local residents we reduced that down to 6 stories, and then further reduced it by stepping down on the west side to 3 stories. And then further to open up views from those adjoining properties to the north and south, we sliced off the corners of the building at 45 degrees, which also then reduces the sort of bulk of the building as viewed from the park and from across the roundabout. And then in terms of materials, these have been carefully chosen to blend with the surroundings. So you've got a darker brick to the base to match the buildings, the 2 stories of the Pedworth estate, and then a lighter brick to the upper stories. So yeah, as I said, we developed the design with a project group, and we had numerous meetings, and some of the changes made based on the input from those sessions was the reduction in height. We pulled the building away further from the west buildings, and we adjusted the boundary treatment we proposed to the east.
I'm afraid your 3 minutes
Great, yeah, thanks.
has come to an end.
That's pretty much it.
Did you have much more to say?
That was pretty much it, I think.
Is that pretty much it?
Yeah.
So thank you very much indeed. Do members have any questions for the applicant at this moment in time? Councillor Tester, followed by Councillor Hill.
So I noticed in one of the objections they referred to minutes of the residents project group meeting not being available. Were those minutes made available to interested residents, or at least topics that were discussed at those meetings and feedback made available?
So in terms of the minutes, I can't confirm 100% whether that happened, but there was a sort of a roundup before the planning submission which gathered up all of the information and all of the, we noted what had been said and then what our, how we had addressed those concerns in the final application.
Can I pose my question to you then? Yeah, just about what we mean by local.
The local policy won't be set until the building exists, so they differ. So they'll start at 100 metres from the property, but they might do it by ward. So it will depend on what they think would be most suitable. It's also important to note that if people are on the register and they don't apply, they expand the area. So they'll go from 100 metres to 500 metres and then ask and then go out even further. And then I'm not sure exactly when, but there'll be a cut-off point where they open it up to everybody then, and it won't be a local. If the local letting policy doesn't achieve, people don't want to live there, then it will become just a standard, policy.
Councillor Livingston.
Thank you. Yes, a question for council really. It was just to understand how the bedroom mix was derived. Very good to see a generous number of 3 beds, but whether any thought was given to larger units, given the...
I think our biggest need is family homes.
Yeah.
So we really need 3 and 4 beds.
So that was my question, was about
driver,
whether there was any thought given to 4 beds or large units, given that we know that those are some of the people that tend to be on the housing list for longest periods, some of those larger bedroom properties, because we just have a shortage of those in the borough.
I don't think we did look at that. I mean, yeah, the priority was really larger 3 beds units. And of course, I don't think that we did look at 4 beds. I think as well that the available kind of layout that we have, I think it would have been difficult to make that work as well. It's quite a constrained site, so.
I'd say normally with 4 beds, you really want to put them in houses as well, rather than in flats, because they're obviously really large families and you've got noise. I know we've nearly finished the scheme Ivy Church around the corner. Well, quite close, and that's got a few mews houses that are 4 beds.
I suppose that's a good point in terms of, the availability of outdoor amenity space, and this particular site has its constraints, doesn't it? Councillor Rule?
Yeah, when you was doing your presentation, you said something about chopping off the corners to please the residents. Is that how you arrived at the 50p looking shape?
Yeah, it was out of concern for opening up those views to the park. If you imagine the sort of, it goes to the point as well of actually the existing building doesn't do that. And if your view is opened up more to the park by virtue of that, if you imagine that, that sort
of... So those
of...
corner bits are where the balconies are, I presume?
Yes, yeah,
right.
Yeah. But there's less of an obstruction. So I think if you imagine the sort of, on the adjoining property, the light grey rectangles, if they were windows, that if it was squared off, your view would be obstructed more by the building.
Which are not also to do with balconies that are protruding would be more imposing as well. So I thought that influenced the design as well.
Yeah,
having the balconies inset would be less obtrusive than having them protruding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, and the balconies on the north as well have screens up to a certain height, so to prevent people looking down into the adjoining gardens.
Okay,
and then
neighbourhood gardens.
Yeah.
I have to say that it does create the illusion of reduced massing, doesn't it? Yeah. It's quite clever, actually. Any additional questions, Councillor Test?
Yeah, just one final one from me. On page 12 of this presentation, you've got the 3rd floor plan, and you've got on the western side, you've got that sort of flat roof bit that's not accessible. It's not a balcony. Had you ever considered doing any sort of like almost green roof style kind of planting on that, just maybe to sort of maximise the kind of biodiversity on the site?
Yes, I think that may have been. I think maintenance access to that was an issue, which would have had to be through the resident's flat, which makes it difficult. Yeah, I think that was the main reason.
Okay. Is that it for members? Right, well, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks.
Thank you.
we have any supporters for this scheme present? Any ward councillors that wish to speak in favour or otherwise of this application? No, I can't see any. Thank you. In the audience, that is. Colleagues, do members have any additional questions in terms of clarity? Do members have any specific comments that they would like to add in favour or otherwise regarding this scheme? Or just general comments about it? If you care to share your views before we go to the vote, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I think what this scheme does do is it does help. Notwithstanding my point that it would be nice to have found some 4-bed properties as well, but it does help us with the significant problem we've got with housing shortage in the area. My ward used to be stretch as far as across the road from there, so I know the site well, and I did used to go to the old Abbeyfield housing office when it was a housing office. So finding a use for that space and finding it helping meeting the needs of people in the area who've got a desperate housing need, to me feels very worthwhile. I think the question I didn't ask earlier, because it had been very comprehensively answered in the addendum, though, I think does raise for me some points that we might want to follow up outside of this meeting about how, with smaller schemes like this from the council, we can look at how we get the best in terms of carbon reduction. I think the answers here are very clear in some of those challenges, but it does raise some broader questions, I think, when we've got schemes like this. Are there other ways of trying to reduce the carbon still further? Because, as I said at the briefing, we had the situation with the Ledbury scheme that was agreed last week, where we managed to get an 89% carbon reduction. So this is 59. That's quite a gap, and it's interesting that larger schemes we can get those larger differentials in. So, but I accept that. We've got a fairly thorough answer here. I was going to ask a question about could you put the substation elsewhere, but I think the other points here made about the piping, the pipe work and things like that are very well made there. So, so I think overall I'm in favour, Chair.
Right, thank you, and I would echo those comments as well, because I had thought of a relocation of the substation, but thank you for your comprehensive response to that. Any additional comments? No? So I'd like to move to the vote that we agree the officer's recommendation as on paper, including any amendments highlighted by officers, the addendum report and conditions arising from the debate. Does anyone wish to second that? Councillor Livingston? Thank you. The members of... OK then. So all those in favour, raise your hand, please. That is unanimous and carried. Thank you very much indeed, colleagues, and thank you.
Thank you. This application is for the Marlborough Cricket Club for the replacement of the existing cricket nets and the erection of a new 3-lane cricket net facility approximately 30 metres to the south of the existing nets. The site is located on the eastern part of the Marlborough Cricket Club, which is on Dulwich Common Sports Ground and Cricket Club Metropolitan Open Land. The application is to replace the existing 3-lane nets with new 3-lane nets, so the use would not be intensified. This site is accessed from the north on Dulwich Common Road. The nearest residential property is approximately 44 metres to the east. The site is also located in Dulwich Wood Conservation Area, and to the northeast here there are two grade 2 listed buildings, Church St Peter and St Peter's Parish Hall. These are not within the setting of the application. With regards to consultation, 184 neighbour letters were sent out, a site notice was displayed and a press notice was published. We received 19 comments, 16 in support, 3 in objection. Comments in support included the existing nets are at the end of their usable life, they're no longer functional, the current nets are in a poor location, and this is a much needed facility for a community club. In objection, the comments included that the net should only be used during normal daylight hours and light should not be allowed, that the nets would increase noise for Ashdown Court residents and that's too near ancient woodland and would affect plants and local wildlife. So you can see here the existing nets are to the eastern part of the site, and in these images you can see how it's set back against the trees. You can also see the condition of the existing nets. The proposed site is located just to the south of the existing nets, and you can see here the nets are 18.3 metres in length, 10.7 in width, 4 metres in height. This is slightly larger than the existing nets, but this is due to updated safety standards. In terms of the principle of the development, the National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 149, and Southwark Plan Policy P57 allow for development of metropolitan open land where it's for the provision of outdoor sport and recreation. As I said, the new nets are 18.3 metres by 10.7 by 4 metres. They're common features in this type of sports facility, and the nets are in a large playing field, so there's no significant impact on the openness of the metropolitan open land. There's no floodlights or any lighting of any kind proposed on this application, so there would be no impacts in terms of light pollution. The existing distance between the nearest neighbour and the existing nets is approximately 34 metres. This would be increased slightly to now 44 metres approximately. So the impact on neighbours is arguably lessened. No trees would be lost. The urban forester has reviewed the application and is satisfied that the development and the materials used or the means of construction would not affect the trees. The ecologist has also reviewed the submission and is satisfied there would be no impacts on ecology or biodiversity as a result of the development. And so in summary, the principle of the development of metropolitan open land is acceptable in this instance in compliance with the National Planning Policy Framework and Southwark Plan. It doesn't harm the openness of the metropolitan open land or detract from its character. It would replace a community facility and make it more functional to the needs of the users of that site. There's no intensification of the use, and so there's no impact on neighbours, and there's no impact on biodiversity or trees as recommended by the urban forester and the ecologist, and so it's recommended this planning permission be granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kira. Do members have any questions to pose to Kira? Go ahead, Councillor Hood.
I'm not sure if it's a question for you or the applicant, but the existing nets, is there any plan for what's going to happen to those, or?
And those nets are to be removed. The applicant can clarify further, but the use isn't going to be, it's not like an additional net that they're adding. This is to replace them completely. So they will be taken from the site.
Thank you. Councillor Livingston.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, looking at the list of objections, the one thing that didn't seem to be covered, and it may be because it's not necessarily strictly speaking, a planning matter, but was about the use of nets during hours after darkness, but there's no floodlighting.
Yes, there's no lights proposed in the application, so it can't actually be used after dark anyway.
Any further questions to the officer? No.
Chair, members, thank you. I'm Charles Moran from CMA Planning, the agent for this application, although the real reason I'm here and the agent for this application is I have two children who play in the junior section at the club. I'm joined by Karen Klomp, who's the current club chairwoman, and behind us we have Dan, who's current club captain, and Owen, who chairs our grants committee.
Sorry, I didn't catch what your role is.
So I am the agent for the application.
You are
Chair.
the agent, righto, but your children use it. Right, okay, thank you. You may start.
Chair, members, we don't want to take too much of your time this evening, given the very clear recommendation, but we're obviously happy to answer any questions you have about our application. Perhaps, though, I can just briefly say that whilst relatively minor in nature, this proposal is really important to the club. Streatham and Marlborough is a community-based club and one of the most inclusive and accessible cricket clubs in the area in terms of age, gender, ethnicity and ability. We may not be blessed with some of the facilities that other clubs in the area have, but we make up for that with the enthusiasm and the time that members and supporters give to making the club work and enabling so many people to participate in a genuine community way. The reason for this application is simply that we desperately need to replace the existing nets, which have come to the end of their life. And so we are lacking an essential facility. Chair, the report and the presentation very clearly sets out the merits of the proposal in planning terms, so I'm not going to repeat those, but as I say, we're very happy to answer any questions that you have this evening. Thanks.
That was very succinct. Thank you very much indeed. Do members have any questions? Just for me, just out of interest, so you've said that the current nets have come into disrepair. Is that can you describe that and how the new nets will then sort of enhance the experience of the game, please, or the practice game?
I think maybe a picture tells 1,000 words. I think you can just see when we say they've fallen into disrepair, they've just been very well used over the years and they've just come to the end of their functional life. They're worn out and they need replacing. They're tired. And they're no longer fit for purpose. But I think, as the officer also explained, they don't meet modern safety standards. So current ECB standards require the net enclosure to be slightly longer in order to ensure that the balls don't escape during practice. And that's one of the problems that we have at the moment, that the balls can occasionally escape the net enclosure, which is a safety issue and also causes disruption in the ground. So that's the real reason, one of the reasons for the nets. But I think, as you can see, both the playing surface and the net enclosures themselves have just come to the end of their life. So we need a replacement modern facility, quite simply.
And what is the general lifespan of the set of nets? I mean, how long have those been in situ, for example?
They've been there for 20 years, Chair. I would imagine a modern facility probably has a longer lifespan, just because the materials that might be used today might have more longevity to them. But they've obviously served the club pretty well so far and just need replacing.
Might I add that the current location is underneath trees as well, as you can see, and the proposed location is away from trees, so that will increase the longevity of the nets as well, of the new facility.
And how many members of the public use this particular facility, just out of interest?
So the club, both junior and senior members, we have around 500 members. If they're not in use for training and if there's no games going on, members of the public are theoretically free to come on in as well.
That's helpful to know. Thank you. Any additional questions, colleagues? Councillor Tester.
Yeah, just a quick one. What do you have planned for the existing site? Is it going to be sort of greened over and turfed over?
Yeah, so those nets that you can see there will be removed and that ground will be given back over to green space, yeah.
Any further questions? Right, well, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Do we have any supporters present, or indeed ward colleagues? No. So we'll move to any comments for committee members, or do you have any further questions for the officers? No. Any general comments? I mean, I think it's fairly obvious that these nets need to be replaced. What is helpful to know is that they'll be set further back for the practical reasons, but also they're they'll be located further back from any current residential housing. And clearly we've heard it's quite well used, wide range of adults and children. So I'm in favour of this particular application. Any additional comments before we go to vote? No. So, colleagues, I would like to, where's my notes? I would like to propose that we accept officers' recommendations, including any comments in the addendum and conditions related to this application. Do I have a seconder? I saw Councillor Rule's hand first. That is second. All those in favour? Raise your hands. Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you. Application 22/AP/1227 Dulwich Park Cafe, Dulwich Park College Road, London SE 21 7BQ, and that is going to be presented by Depeche. Depeche, when you're ready, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application for a kiosk in Dulwich Park near the existing cafe. So there's the refreshment house, the sort of area to the right on the screen, as you can see, it is where the proposed kiosk would go. There are some elevations of the kiosk with the refreshment house shown in context. Similarly, some elevations. There would be, if I take you to this picture, those cycle stands would need to move because that's where the kiosk would go, and the cycle stands would be moved closer to the building, the refreshment house at the moment. So this application is before you as the last one because it's development on metropolitan open land. Those need to go to subcommittees. It complies with the tests for appropriate development on metropolitan open land, being an essential facility for outdoor recreation. Everyone likes ice cream in the summer in the park. So it's recommended for approval.
That must be on record as the shortest presentation. That's great, lovely, thank you. Do members have any additional questions for Depeche? Councillor Hu.
I just got a quick one. I apologise. I think this was asked in one of the pre-briefings we did. But what happens to the benches that are on the site?
So the benches can be moved. So they'll just have to be moved a little bit further away onto that piece of hard standing.
So they're
just
staying
to make
then.
some,
They're just
yes.
yeah. Okay, fine.
Councillor Hicks.
Thank you. Just a quick question on, I wondered whether any consideration had been given to congestion in that area of pedestrians walking past the refreshment house.
I think one of the reasons for putting the kiosk in was to ease some of the congestion in the cafe itself. So people would queue up outside. I imagine that there's a fair amount of space that for that to be managed out there.
Any further questions? No. And are you the sole, you're the first individual agent, so come forward. I do have a James emblem and a Mark Shearman, but I'm sure you can identify who you are, and if you could state what your role is, and then we'll make a start on timing.
My name is James Emblin. I'm from First Plan, and I'm the agent for the application. Firstly, good evening, everyone. The proposal put forward to you tonight seeks permission for the installation of a prefabricated single-storey kiosk unit to be used in association with the existing Dulwich Clock Cafe within Dulwich Park. The kiosk is to be positioned immediately to the east of the existing cafe building on a small area of hard standing. As it has been previously mentioned, the proposed kiosk would be located within metropolitan open land, the Grade 2 listed Dulwich Park, the Dulwich Wood Conservation Area, and also a site of importance for nature conservation. Notwithstanding this, the existing cafe building is neither statutorily nor locally listed. The proposed kiosk unit will be used to sell items such as teas, coffees, ice creams and other refreshments, which in turn will help to reduce congestion within the adjacent cafe building during busy periods. The kiosk itself will be only used during certain times of the year, specifically the 1st of April through to the 30th of September, and it will be subsequently removed at the end of this period. In terms of its use, the kiosk will remain entirely ancillary to the existing cafe use and will assist in reducing congestion and alleviating queues within the internal envelope of the cafe. The proposal has come about as a result of community consultation and the popularity of the existing cafe. It is understood following correspondence from the applicant that the local park management and the Friends of the Park group are all agreed on the kiosk. It is noted within the committee report that the proposal is recommended for a limited period of 3 years, and the officer has recommended a condition imposing this time limit, which our client is willing to accept. In terms of its design and heritage considerations, the proposed kiosk unit is considered modest in scale and would remain entirely ancillary to the use of the cafe, and therefore would not impact the openness of the metropolitan open land or the historic significance of the wider conservation area and listed park. The kiosk will be constructed of white painted shiplap panelling to match the aesthetic of the adjacent cafe. This will also feature an open serving aperture to its front elevation and be accessed by staff via a side access door. A roller shutter will be concealed within the fascia panel and used to secure the kiosk outside of trading hours. The kiosk will sit on an area of hard standing which currently comprises 6 Sheffield cycle stands, and these are to be located nearer to the cafe building. As previously mentioned, the kiosk unit will be located next to the main ancillary to the cafe, and it will not give rise to any additional noise or disturbance, and will simply be used to serve small refreshments. The kiosk will not feature any plant equipment.
Got 30 seconds left.
The application site is understood to not be located within close proximity of any noise-sensitive uses, with the nearest residential properties located around 180 metres to the south. Furthermore, there are no other commercial or business uses within the nearby vicinity which would be affected by the kiosk. In conclusion, the proposed kiosk is considered to be a modest addition to the existing cafe use, and it will help to alleviate internal congestion currently experienced during busy periods. It's therefore considered the proposal should be supported in line with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Just
very
slightly
much.
over, but
Oh,
you did
thank you.
say the magic word in conclusion, so I allowed you to
Thank you very much.
conclude. Thank you. That was pretty comprehensive. Councillor Rule, question for?
Yeah, I was just wondering, what was the idea, because it sounds like every year you're going to take it down.
Yeah.
What's the point of that? Couldn't it be just left up for 3 years and then used seasonally? What was the idea behind
I think it was
dismantling it every...
Yeah, I think it was the applicant's intention just to use it mainly during the summer period, or spring-summer period when it's busiest. I'm not sure if they were planning on, in the future, keeping it there long-term, but I think to begin with they wanted just to have it temporarily there.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Thank you.
Ward, yes, I beg your pardon. Sorry, just one voice, thank you. So we don't have any supporters in the room or indeed local ward councillors. So are there any additional questions that members of the committee would like to pose to the officer or officers present? Any general comments regarding this particular application? Well, my view is that it's obviously quite welcomed. There has been a local consultation and there clearly is a demand, and we heard from the applicant that this was in response to the overcrowding and the relief of the demand of ice creams in the cafe, and this is just to sort of regulate the public's desire for an ice cream during the summer months. It's a temporary measure. It's going to be there seasonal over a 3-year period. And I would like to propose that we vote in favour of the officer's recommendations, that we grant this particular application to include any comments in the addendum and conditions. All those in... Oh, do I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second. I think ice cream is generally good.
I did see Councillor Hood, so can I invite Councillor Hood to second it? So because I know you seconded the first application. All those in favour? That's unanimous and carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, colleagues, officers, and committee members. Right, and now we can go off and enjoy the late.